Welcome to Civics in a Year, the podcast that makes civic literacy fast, accessible, and surprisingly engaging. In just 10 minutes an episode, we'll tackle one of 250 essential questions about American democracy, how it works, why it matters, and what it means for you. Whether you're a student, a teacher, or just someone who wants to better understand your country and your rights, you're in the right place. Civics in a Year is powered by the Civic Literacy Curriculum from the Center for American Civics and is produced in partnership with the School of Civic and Economic Thought and Leadership at Arizona State University.
In 1872, Susan B. Anthony walked into a polling place in Rochester, New York, and voted in a presidential election. She was arrested. Not long after, she stood before a judge and was fined for illegally voting. She refused to pay. But what makes this moment so important is not just that she voted, it's why she believed she had the right to vote in the first place. Because Susan B. Anthony was not simply protesting the law, she was making a constitutional argument. And in 1873, she delivered one of the most powerful speeches in American history. Is it a crime for a U.S. citizen to vote? Today's episode is all about that speech and about the deeper question it raises. What happens when the Constitution's promises and the realities of American life don't match up? To understand Anthony's argument, we need to step back into the moment she was living in. The Civil War had ended just a few years earlier. The country was trying to redefine freedom and citizenship. The 14th Amendment, ratified in 1868, declared that all persons born or naturalized in the United States are citizens. It also said that no state could deny citizens the privileges or immunities of citizenship. Then came the 15th Amendment in 1870, which prohibited denying the right to vote on the basis of race. But here is the key issue. Neither amendment said anything about sex. So women were clearly citizens under the 14th Amendment, but they were still denied the right to vote. This created a major debate within the women's rights movement. Some activists supported the 15th Amendment as a step forward. Others, including Susan B. Anthony, saw a contradiction. If citizenship means something, if the Constitution guarantees rights to citizens, then why are women excluded? Anthony decided not to wait for a new law. Instead, she decided she would test the Constitution itself. So she voted. And then she used her trial and her speech to make a case that the Constitution already protected her right to do so. So let's turn to the speech here. Anthony begins with a direct and powerful claim. She says, "It was we the people, not we the white male citizens, nor yet we the male citizens, but we the whole people who form this union." This is a deliberate reinterpretation of the Constitution's opening words, "we the people." Anthony is arguing that the Constitution was created by all people, not just men. And if that's true, then its protections must apply to all people. That's the claim about popular sovereignty. In American government, authority comes from the people. Anthony's argument is simple, but it's profound. If women are a part of the people, then denying them the vote undermines the very foundation of the system. She then moves to the question of citizenship. Anthony asks, are women persons? It almost sounds absurd, but she's making a legal point. The 14th Amendment says all persons born in the United States are citizens. So if women are persons and persons are citizens, then women are citizens. If women are citizens, then they are entitled to the rights of a citizen. She puts it clearly, quote, "Being persons then, women are citizens," end quote. But from there, she takes it to the next step. If women are citizens, then voting must be one of the privileges of citizenship. And here is where her argument becomes especially important, because this is not just about fairness or equality in a general sense. It's about how we define rights within the Constitution. Anthony is claiming that the right to vote is inherent in citizenship itself. She strengthens her case by connecting it to the founding era. She invokes a familiar phrase, taxation without representation. Women, she points out, are required to follow the law. They pay taxes, they're governed, and yet they have no voice in choosing the people who make those laws. This, she argues, is the very injustice that sparked the American Revolution. So her claim is not radical in the sense of rejecting American principles. It's radical in the sense that it takes these principles very seriously. She's saying if we believe in the ideals of the Declaration of Independence, then we can't justify excluding women from political participation. She also frames this question of consent. So American government is supposed to rest on the consent of the governed. But if women cannot vote, then they have no meaningful way to give or withhold consent. So what kind of government is this? Anthony answers her own question. She says it's not a true democracy. Instead, it's, quote, odious aristocracy. In other words, it's a system where one group rules over another without their participation. Now, despite the strength of her argument, Anthony does not win her case. In fact, the legal system rejected her reasoning. Just a couple of years later, in 1875, the Supreme Court decided Minor versus Happersett. In this case, the court ruled that while women are indeed citizens, citizenship does not automatically include the right to vote. This is a very crucial moment in constitutional history because it shows that there is a gap between constitutional ideals and constitutional law. Anthony believed that the 14th Amendment already guaranteed women the right to vote. The court disagreed. They said that voting is not a fundamental privilege of citizenship and that states can decide who is allowed to vote unless the Constitution explicitly says otherwise. This leads to one of the most important takeaways from Anthony's speech. Arguments alone are not always enough to change constitutional meaning. Sometimes even powerful, compelling arguments must be followed by formal changes. That's exactly what happened. The ideas that Anthony articulated in the 1870s don't just disappear. They become the foundation for the long struggle for women's suffrage. Years later, in 1920, the 19th Amendment is ratified. And for the first time, the Constitution explicitly prohibited denying the right to vote on the basis of sex. So what do we do with Susan B. Anthony's argument today? Well, on one level, she lost. She was arrested, she was fined, the courts rejected her interpretation. But on another level, she fundamentally reshapes the conversation. She forces Americans to confront a contradiction between their principles and their practices. And she asks a question that really couldn't be ignored. If the Constitution speaks in the name of we the people, who counts as part of the people? And that question still matters because throughout American history, different groups have had to make similar arguments. They have had to claim that the promises of the Constitution apply to them, even when the law does not yet recognize these claims. Anthony's speech is a powerful example of how constitutional changes often begin, not with an amendment, but with an argument. Now, I do want to be clear. The 19th Amendment does not give all women the right to vote. It really doesn't focus on anybody but white women. That doesn't change until the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which we will have a podcast on that. Now, Susan B. Anthony does not live to see the 19th Amendment, but her words, her reasoning, and her willingness to act help make it possible. Her speech reminds us that the Constitution is not just a legal document. It's also a set of ideas that Americans continue to debate, interpret, and expand. And sometimes the most important question is not what the Constitution currently allows, but what it should mean.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of Civics in a Year. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and share it with someone who cares about a constitutional republic as much as you do. For more episodes, resources, and updates, follow us on social media or visit us at civics.asu.edu. Make sure to check out the show notes for any relevant links. Special thanks to the United States Marine Band for their performance of the Stars and Stripes Forever. Let's keep building a stronger constitutional republic. one episode at a time.